Welcome guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto became the supreme Jedi Shinobi, and Fem Revan, Anko, Hinata and Tamari chose him? Part 1. Let's start this fanfic. Jedi Master Revan Namikaze looked at the smoldering controls of her ship. The damn thing blew up right as she was entering lightspeed and her ship spun out of control. She didn't have a clue where she would end up if the ship didn't blow up before that. If she hadn't gotten a warning in the Force, she would have been sitting right at the controls and most likely dead. She allowed the ship's emergency systems to kick over before heading to the main hold where she accessed the systems from the controls there. Times like this I miss the Aben Hawk, she thought, sighing of the ship that was nothing more than rust and ash. Why am I suddenly thinking of things 4,000 years ago? Revan sighed again. She hadn't aged a day in 4,000 years. Not even the masters knew that being a Solarian meant. She thought, and while she missed her homeworld, it had been destroyed long ago while she had still been a child. Checking the systems, she saw she was coming up on Coruscant. Thank the Force for small favors, she thought. It had taken her some time to find a usable ship out beyond the Outer Rim. She'd been in hiding for nearly 1,000 years and now the Force was telling her to make her return. And who am I to question the will of the Force? Shaking her head, she thought of all the things she had learned amongst the more unique worlds of unknown regions. My time on that world with Ninja was interesting, learned a lot of things there. With that thought, Revan formed a simple cross seal with one hand and focused her chakra. Multiple shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke and 6 identical copies of Revan appeared. Alright, we need to get the main controls in the fixed enough for us to land. Get to it. She pointed at 2 of the clones. She then looked at another pair. You two check the hyperdrive, it was hiccuping something fierce as we made the jump. The 4 clones nodded and went to their tasks. What about us, Rev? The last 2 clones asked. One of you gets to cook, the other gets to check our weapon supplies, she said. The one that got weapons nodded and went to do as it was told. The one left to the cooking was feeling rebellious. And what are you going to be doing while we're all busy? Revan paused and sighed. This was one side effect she hated with the Cage Bunshin. The clones could perform independent thought when they needed to. I'm going to check on Naruto, she said, a catch in her voice. The clone looked sad at that. He's going to be fine. The stasis pod was working fine when you last checked it, the clone said. Revan shook her head. I just hope after all these years the medical facilities haven't stagnated on Coruscant. The clone watched her go, a sad look on its face. 2 immortal beings and Yetis being destroyed by an unknown poison that was designed just for him. The clone said sadly. He'll make it, Revan. The love you two share is too important for him to give up without a fight, the clone said before preparing a meal. Revan entered the medical bay and stopped before the stasis pod. Her hand reached out and touched the glass over the occupant's face. He had whisker-like marks on his tanned skin, long spiky blonde hair, his blue eyes were closed as she studied him, like she had done millions of times since she first met him. Hey lover, she said softly. We're coming up on Coruscant. I wish you were awake to see it. Revan stopped, her hand still resting on the glass. It's been a long year, love. I've missed you so much. Revan looked at her husband, her eyes taking in his features. I don't care what the new council has to say. I'll make sure you're better. We can head out. I can show you worlds and wonders of the galaxy. Revan reached out with the Force and felt him fighting the poison in his system, a battle to live. She didn't touch him in the Force, for she knew he needed his full attention, even in stasis, to keep the poison back. I won't lose you, Naruto Namikaze. I can't lose you, she said the last part softly. You have been my light, my life, my sanity, she thought, looking at the pod's occupant. Hey boss lady, she turned to see a shadow clone standing there covered in soot and sporting a grin. We rigged the console. Best thing would be to scrap this ship after we land. We can't do anything more with it. Revan nodded. She appreciated the report being verbal, rather than the clone dissipating and her getting the mental lowdown. Naruto had warned her that she could get a headache, and the information anyways, but she preferred the verbal after all the years of being a general. Thank you anyways, Revan said, and the clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. She sighed getting the information, then turned to look at the stasis pod once more. You'll be better, son, love. With one last look she turned and left. Revan brought the ship in and was somewhat surprised at how much Coruscant had grown in 4,000 years. And yet, some things remained the same, she thought, spotting the Jedi Temple and the Senate buildings. Checking her readings, she plotted the course and brought the ship in. Jedi Temple. This is unnamed freighter requesting emergency landing and a medical team on hand, she said after activating the communications unit that made a strange noise after starting up. Unidentified freighter. This is Jedi Temple Control, say again. I have a poisoned person on board in stasis, I need a healer. Now open the doors, this ship isn't going to hold together much longer. Revan transmitted her codes and was surprised the doors opened. Guess they never got around to removing me from the accepted lists. Thank you, Bastilla. She thought the last part as she brought the freighter in. It groaned as she fired the retro rockets and activated the landing gear. The hangar was nearly deserted and she thanked the Force and Cammy for that. The ship landed and she heard the landing gear squeal in protest. She powered systems down and went to the boarding ramp and hit the release, before going to the medbay and preparing the stasis pod for movement. She used the cargo loader and was at the bottom of the ramp before she was met by several Jedi, one wearing healer's robes. Hey, she greeted and sighed. I've been around Naruto way too long. She saw their looks. What was he poisoned by? The healer asked, foregoing formalities, over the health of a patient. Not sure what it's called. It was tailor-made for him. Here's a sample of it I got. She handed a vial to the healer. We were beyond known space, so I put him in a pod and got the first ship I could find to get him here. The healer motioned for a pair of Padawans. Get this stasis pod to the medical center. Do not open it. They nodded and rushed it to the turbo lift. Revan sighed and moved to follow. A moment, please. She turned and saw several Jedi there. Few questions have we. Revan blinked, seeing a being that reminded her of Master Vandar. In all the years I've lived, all the worlds I've traveled, I have only encountered Master Vandar before and never his like. I can answer a few, but I would like to check on my husband, she said. Noticing their raised eyebrows, she wondered what that meant. Identification we need. The code you used to open the hangar, long unused has it been. The little trog isn't dumb. My name is Revan Namikaze. My rank is that of Jedi Knight. Identification number 0073640036. The tall one next to the little green one was black, bald and had the air of a Jedi Master, was holding a datapad. Her identification confirms. He paused and his eyes widened. Impossible. Revan smiled. Yes, I'm over 4,000 years old. I bet the Trog here is several centuries under his belt. The olive green-skinned alien gave a bow of his head at that. Now, if you don't mind. Knight Revan, much the council has to ask you. After I'm sure my husband is fine, I will answer your questions. Sorry if I sound rude, masters, but where my mate is concerned, I don't have the patience to deal with questions. You want my history? Dig through the archives like a Padawan. She smiled at that. With a slight bow to them, she hurried to the lift, leaving a group of bewildered Jedi. Married? One Obi-Wan Kenobi asked, looking at his master Qui-Gon Jinn in shock. Knight Revan, raised in the old code. Master Yoda said, his eyes following the black-robed woman. Revan, as in the Revanistic code? Obi-Wan asked. Mace Windu handed Qui-Gon the datapad. Solarian, the Jedi Master asked, seeing her home world wiped out long ago. Revan is the last of her people. Yoda said, a hint of sadness in his voice. How long can they live? Obi-Wan asked, confused. Unless killed, they are immortal. Yoda said. Sith Lord Exar Kun tried to end their world during his time. Revan as a child was the sole survivor. You know a lot about Knight Revan. Qui-Gon noted as he was reading the entry in the datapad. Yoda made a humming sound and hobbled off, leaving Mace, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and a dilapidated ship in the hangar. The sounds of the medbay were soothing as Revan watched as Naruto was laid on the bed. We were able to break down the toxin and it was rather simple to concoct an antidote. The Jedi healer said. Thank you. In the unknown regions, the technology isn't advanced enough to do such, and while they might come up with toxins like that, they rarely make antidotes. Revan said, her eyes on the sleeping form of her husband. How long before he wakes up? She asked. About 2 hours, as his body is healing rapidly. It's not like anything I've seen before. Revan smiled. Naruto has a natural healing factor. His body temperature will run hotter than you think it should. She said. The healer nodded. I was going to ask about that. Revan sighed. I suppose I should go before the council now that he's safe. If he wakes up while I'm gone, get him to eat, she smiled. And make sure you have enough, he has a high metabolism. The healer nodded again and Revan stopped by her lover's bed and kissed him lightly on the lips for the first time since he was put in stasis nearly a month ago. I'll be back soon, love. She stroked his whisker marks and smiled softly as he instinctively leaned into her touch. Spinning about, she headed for the lift that would take her up to the council chambers. Some things stay the same, while others change. She thought of the layout of the temple, and while it had grown, she still knew where nearly all the important places were. Revan growled as she waited to speak with the council. Damn old bastards, hey, look who's calling who old. But still, they want to talk to me, then make me wait. Councils all over the galaxy are the same, now or 4,000 years ago. She leaned against the wall across from the chamber doors, her right leg crossed over her left, her finger tapping a random beat on her crossed forearms. She turned her head and looked at the skyline of Coruscant, having not worrying about her ship falling apart around her. She noticed a lot of buildings reaching further above the clouds, the constant traffic in the skylines. More people are here. She reached out through the force and felt the life energy of the planet. If there was a Sith Lord like Nihilius, he would feed good on Coruscant now. Revan sighed. She'd been in the unknown regions when her first master, Kreia, had led 2 other Sith Lords on a purge of the Jedi. Kreia, how long has it been since I thought about you, my former master? Where did you fall? Was it after me? Jaina swore you helped her from her exile. Revan sighed. I've lived too long, yet it's those that I thought of as family and friends that I always miss the most. Her mind turned towards her husband in the medical bay. Beloved. She sent through their bond. Rev, where the hell am I? Came the annoyed feeling. Revan fought to not laugh out loud. We are on Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple. It was the only place I could think of that might be able to help you. Resignation through the bond. What happened to the bastard? I know you thought of him as a brother, love. But when you fell after that poison, I kind of went Sith Lord on his. The biggest piece left could be described as a dish sponge. Oh, Rev, are you okay? Came the concern. Revan took a moment to feel the love and concern in the bond. I am now that you are awake and well. I swear, Naruto, I don't think I can lose you. Don't worry, Rev, you won't. I think my healing factor would have won eventually. Well, I couldn't risk it. You save me every day, Naruto. You have since you found me all those years ago. She smiled, feeling his embarrassment. I was 16, on a training trip with the biggest pervert in the elemental nations, and I find this angel swimming in a hidden pond under the moonlight. Revan blushed, remembering their first meeting. You were so cute, and sweet. I still feel like I robbed the cradle. Laughter came back across the bond. Brat. Eat. I need to meet with the council. They'll have more questions than your friend Konohamaru did when you handed him the Hokage hat. Snort. I thought Ko was going to shit a brick when I named him the 7th Hokage 5 years into my reign. Revan had to agree. And even at 52 he called you boss. Ko was one of my precious people. He'll be a fine Hokage, like his grandfather before him. Revan smiled. They had left Konoha in the hands of Konohamaru Sarutobi, after being married for nearly 30 years. He'll miss you. Revan sent. A hint of sadness came back. I'll miss them all as well. But Ko and Hanabi will be fine. Most of my friends are in their 60s and 70s or dead. It was a good time to leave. Naruto said across the bond. Our being there and not aging was hurting them. Hunting down Sasuke and his son Ichigo had to be done. The Tem learned Orochimaru's immortality jutsu, and I couldn't leave him to terrorize Konoha any longer. Revan nodded. It was one of the reasons they'd given to Konohamaru and Hanabi before they left. I sent a messenger toad to tell Konohamaru that we were leaving. I said we probably wouldn't be back for a long time. If ever. Naruto sent back sadly. Revan wished she was down there right now. Her husband was hurting, and she knew it was her decision that was causing it. It had been one of the same decisions she'd made countless times over the millennia. Force. I miss Bastilla and Mission. Hell, even old Bindo and even that damned pilot Onasi. She thought. Despite what many thought at the time, she hadn't loved Karth Onasi, she saw him as an annoying friend. Quick to judge and long time to apologize. She'd vanished after the Star Forge to take time to piece together her memories and had taken Mission and Zalbar with her to the outer rim worlds of Nopolis and Shington. The return had brought her face to face with her former friend Jaina Zolo, the exile as many called her. Revan called her friend and confidant. I should have done something other than let her go back to Atris after the war. That shoulda had it out for Jaina because she followed me. Thinking of old friends' love, Naruto's mental voice asked softly. Sorry. Being back here is bringing old memories to the surface. People, places, old friends long gone. Revan sent back. It's okay, Haim. The healer just brought a tray. Is this slop even food? Revan laughed as she got the mental image. Goop. It's nutritious. Rev. It's gray. Naruto sent back. Eat your goop. I promise to take you out for real food when I'm done here. Revan sent, noticing the door opening. Showtime. Wish me luck. You don't need any more luck. But I send my love with you, Revan Namikaze. Revan felt the mental caress and kiss, and she squared her shoulders and entered the main council chamber of the Jedi Masters for the first time in 4,000 years. Naruto sighed as he looked at the bowl. Please tell me they have ramen. I'm not sure what you're asking about, sir. The healer said. Ramen, noodles, broth, vegetables. He saw her blank look. I swear if they don't have ramen, I'll have Revan take us back and fill the cargo hold with it, or get a Yame's daughter or granddaughter to come with and be my personal ramen cook. Smiling at that, he looked at the substance again. You're sure this is food? I mean, it looks like something used to sandblast the walls. The healer smiled. Well, we did just clean the temple. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You're pulling my leg. I'm a Jedi, I don't have a sense of humor. The woman said, smiling even more. Naruto laughed. I think I'll like you. I'm Naruto. Naruto Namikaze. The woman smiled, and Naruto took a moment to study her. She had diamond marks on her cheeks and forehead. Her skin was pale, nearly white. She wore robes like Revan's but longer and were a deep blue. I am healer Shishidan. Welcome to the Jedi Temple. So, my wife is with the council? Naruto asked after trying a mouthful of the goop, and realized it was like the energy bars Choji used to make for him. Knight Revan, she asked for confirmation. Yeah, he said with a smile of someone in love. It probably will take a while, as Knight Revan's return is the talk of the temple. Naruto groaned. Not very often that a knight comes back after missing for 4 millennia. Naruto shrugged. If I hadn't been stupid and gotten poisoned, I have a feeling it would have been even longer. Naruto said. About that poison. She started and Naruto nodded at her to continue. It's serpentine based, but none of the serpents in the database were a match. I had to synthesize a whole new antidote out of the poison Knight Revan had collected. Naruto nodded. Yeah, enemy made it and coated his sword with it. I thought my healing factor would have been able to deal with it, so I ignored the wound and kept going till I collapsed. What world are you from? She asked. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Not sure it has a name. The elemental countries aren't into space travel, and we never really looked beyond the stars or thought of much else but what was happening on the dirt. Revan might know, as she wandered a bit and picked up history before I met her. Naruto finished the goop. He wished for his usual amount of ramen, but it would wait. Being married has taught me patience, and Rev won't let me gorge myself on ramen like I did when I was little. So, What's it like to be married to Knight Revan? She asked. Naruto smiled at this. Well, welcome before this council, you are Knight Revan. Long has it been pondered of your fate. Yoda said after introductions had been completed. Revan gave a formal bow to the council. Truthfully, I never intended to return, circumstances were out of my control and I was forced to. Yoda made a humming sound and she narrowed her eyes. She'd seen the same look on Master Vrook's face, and she knew he was already thinking 6 moves ahead. Your husband as well? He finally asked, and shock filled the chamber as that bit of news hit the council members who hadn't witnessed her arrival to the temple. He's awake, hungry and eager to explore new places. And I almost pity anyone who aggravates him. I don't think Jedi have ever been pranked before. Revan finished her thought. She could see the concentration and frowns on several faces. If you're trying to scan my surface thoughts, that won't work. She said, startling them. Over the millennia I have constructed mental shields that not even masters of the mind arts can get in. Boy was Ino pissed when her family's techniques failed. Revan thought fondly of the blonde ninja that had been a friend of her husband's. What are your attentions now, Knight Revan? A female master asked. Revan looked at the dark-skinned woman and paused. Truthfully, I need to see the status of my vault. Either get the ship no scratch that, get a new ship and have that one scrapped. Then I was thinking of showing Naruto around my old stomping grounds. See how galactic history has fared in 4,000 years, have a few laughs. She saw one scowl on the Serene Master's face. I do know the Jedi of your time were forbidden such attachments. Revan snorted. Coming from you. How many wives and children do you have, Master? Mundi was it. She watched him shift in his seat. For those that don't know me or my history, let me sum up a few things for all of you. I am a knight of the old code. The code that was instated that you all follow was set after Exar Kun. My master had me swear to the old code, for as a Solarian, I couldn't follow the code that most were trying their best to shove down every Padawan's throat back in those days. I used my emotions, instincts. And when the council wiped my memories, they still couldn't wipe out the core of who and what I was. A Sith Lord. Mace Windu spoke up and several masters looked panicked. Revan laughed. I was labeled a Sith Lord, but I wasn't really. She looked at Yoda. I believe you need to open Master Vandar's personal holocron. It will answer many questions that happened in those days, and why he made sure I was made a Jedi a second time, despite some wanting to kill me. She looked around the gathered masters. Weak has this council become. I sense darkness in the Senate. Now hold on. A master stood up. You have no right to speak. Silence. Yoda said, cutting off the Corellian. Knight Revan, much she has seen. Foolish it is to ignore her warnings. Trust she has of mine, no question. Yoda's eyes scanned the masters, many of them shocked. Rank of master she was given by council after Battle of Terrace. Confirm it now, he asked, looking at Revan, whose eyes widened. Oh, hell no, Revan said, shaking her head. I am not master material. I hate meetings, and if you ask Naruto, I can't even keep the summons listening to me. That last phrase quirked many eyebrows. Rank of master has been awarded you, Revan. Why do you run from it? Yoda asked. Because little Trog, I hate responsibility. Revan yelled the last bit out. I was in charge during the Mandalorian Wars as a knight, and I hated it. I hated making decisions that could and did cost lives of soldiers under my command. Despite what history said, I never wanted to go through with Vrook's and Vandar's plan to root out traitors to the Republic. I never wanted to find the Star Forge, and I sure as hell didn't want to lead my best friend to the dark side and get blown up with my memories sealed away. Revan was clenching her fists at her side. I didn't want to journey around the thrice damn ignorant and stuck-up galaxy unlocking my memories and being nearly killed by a friend along the way. I didn't want to face my best friend who I considered my brother and kill him. Revan glared at Yoda. I left the Republic 4,000 years ago to get away from this. Don't. Revan. Yoda said, his voice soft. Deny who and what you are will not help you. You have a deep need to help others. Revan sighed. Damn manipulating old people. She thought remembering Tsunade saying the same damn thing to her when she'd come to Konoha with Naruto and the slug Sannin and 5th Hokage manipulated her into becoming a nin of the Hidden Leaf. I really hate your species, Trog. Yoda gave her a satisfied grin. Protest too much you do. Vandar spoke highly of you, as did the Exile, Knight and later Master Shan and others in their holocrons. Sappy bastards. Revan muttered, but she was touched her friends thought of her, even when she ran away to heal her heart, body and soul. Masters. They turned towards the door to see healer Shishi stepping in, a nervous look on her face. Yes. Revan groaned. He slipped out, didn't he? Shishi nodded. I just went to check on supplies and when I returned he was gone. Revan laughed. Naruto hates hospitals of any kind, always has. She took a deep breath and then pulled a very battered-looking holocron from the inside of her robes. My holocron. I do want it back, Trog. She said, giving Yoda a look as the Force touched it and levitated it over to the clawed hand of Yoda, who nodded. Revan looked at Shishi. I think I know where he is. How? Mace Windu asked. Naruto and I are bonded on many levels. That and I know my husband very well. First thing he'll do is wander off and try and find a place in the temple to train. Most would be looking around to take in the sights, but Naruto after any kind of confinement will look for a place to stretch and test his body. I just hope he doesn't do anything too destructive. Revan said the last part softly. With a half bow she looked at the council. If you'll excuse me, masters, I best catch my husband before he offends someone and blows them and or the temple up. She didn't wait for their acknowledgement. Many wide eyes followed her out of the doors. Did she mean that? Plo Koon's deep voice rumbled. A Nautolan master. Kit Fisto grinned. Be interesting to find out, my friend. Yoda chuckled as he gazed at the ancient holocron. Interesting times ahead there will be. Master Revan and her husband will change many things, they shall. The council nodded, all of them noticing the inflection on the word master. I'll prepare her a list of Padawans to choose from, Adi Gallia said, but stopped as Yoda shook his head. Apprentice she has already. Strong in the Force as Naruto Namikaze. The others closed their eyes and reached out. By the Force. Adi said, her eyes opening. How can anyone be that bright in the Force? It's like he and Revan are of the Force. Yoda agreed. Flows around them, through them. To them there is no light side, no dark side. The Force just is. His hand stroked the holocron in his grip. Not many knew this, but Yoda was a history junkie and he had in his hands the personal holocron to one of the biggest pieces of 4,000 years. Pair them with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan we shall. He said. Allow Revan and Naruto to become acclimated to the galaxy. And at the same time keep an eye on them. Mace said. She gives into her anger too easily. Solarian she is. Emotions are important to them. Empathy and instinct helped them, it had. Yoda looked around the gathered masters. Now, about Senate. Focus we shall on Revan's warning. Dark there is in its halls. Prepare we must. Naruto grinned as he slipped down the corridors. He'd taken a moment to admire the view from the window, and he'd been intimidated by what he saw, but he shook it off. Come on, Baka. This is Revan's territory. If she can stand living in that apartment for a year and not complain once, I cannot be such a rube and not be surprised. I mean, she showed me her ship, so I shouldn't be surprised by what I see. Naruto looked out over Coruscant. He was tempted to leave the temple to explore, but he would wait for Revan. I could find trouble that is beyond me. That, and even though Revan taught me a couple languages, I don't want to insult someone too badly without meaning it. He smiled as he used chakra to run up a wall and hang from a ceiling as several younglings passed by underneath him. He followed them, and despite being upside down he got a good idea where things were. I am shocked no one has looked up and noticed me. Naruto thought. But like Kakashi said, most people never look up. Naruto felt a moment of sadness thinking of his first sensei who died at the hands of their former teammate. Shaking himself from his memories, he felt a spike of emotion from Revan, but she was shielding hard so he couldn't tell what was happening, and he knew that if she was in trouble she would tell him. He passed several rooms and ended up in a high room where he saw several people of various ages and species practicing with lightsabers. He remembered when Revan had him use one of hers back when he was on his journey. He was surprised how light they were and had to learn how to wield one on its lowest settings so as not to lop off a limb. Most of them are using the basic style Rev taught me at first. So that would make them Padawans. Dropping lightly to the floor in a darkened corner, he watched several of the spars. Maybe now that we're here, Revan and I could make my own. The blonde thought. Not that I don't mind using Rev's, but she is a sight to see with both blades in motion. He remembered their assault on the Sound Village, him armed with a pair of Anbu swords and her with her lightsabers. Taught those bastards what happens when you kill my precious people. He thought of Iruka's death and his rampage when he learned of the message that Sasuke had left for him with the body. Shaking his head and focusing his thoughts, he calmed his emotions, not that any of the Jedi in the room could tell, as he'd learned how to shield himself from numerous lessons with Revan. I think she had more fun going through my mind and learning everything about me. But then, I saw her life as well. Naruto smiled softly, remembering seeing some his wife's most embarrassing moments from her first time as a Padawan, her time with Mission Bao during the hunt for the Star Forge and the reclamation of her memories. The pain she felt when realized that most her friends were dead, and her desire never to return to the Republic. And yet, she came back because of me. Naruto thought. Studying the room, he noticed the rack with numerous lightsabers and went over to inspect them. Picking up one, he tested the balance of the grip. He put it back down. Too bottom heavy, he thought. He went through several of them, never activating them, but getting a feel for the handles. Oh, he paused, seeing a double-bladed grip. Revan can slap hers together to make a double-bladed lightsaber. This one is a solid grip. The blonde thought as he picked it up and spun the handle in a pattern he'd learned during his Bojutsu lessons with Jiraiya during his 3-year training trip. Nice balance to the grip. He thumbed the activation switch and a pair of orange blades sprung to life. Oh hell yeah, Naruto said with a smile. Going to an empty practice space, he went through several of the forms Revan had shown him, and added in several of his own moves from the styles of his homeworld. Kami, I'm no longer in the elemental nations. Who would have thought? Naruto kept moving. He found some of the Inuzuka styles felt like a perfect fit to the double-bladed style. Naruto was in constant motion, his eyes closed, unaware that nearly every eye in the training room was on him. Naruto spun about. The simple Bojutsu style with slight alterations gave him a nearly perfect form with the orange blades of destruction. Several times to the onlookers it seemed the blonde was going to lose a limb, but he never once faltered. Several knights and masters were watching the stranger, who to them had better control than many seasoned knights. The whiskered blonde ignored them all. He was in the zone and enjoying the saber dance Revan had shown him. Wait, didn't that lead to that night in Suna? Naruto thought with a wicked grin on his face as he remembered their night of passion, and of course Gaara's yell the following morning about them putting up silencing jutsus. He gets used to sleeping and acts like it's more important than anything. Naruto did a leaping helicopter kick and landed with ease as he then tossed the double-bladed lightsaber into the air and performed several back flips before landing, catching it perfectly, continuing the motion into a rapid series of spins. Naruto began to slow his dance as he felt the familiar presence of his wife coming. He smiled as he opened up to her. Done with the meeting, dear? You snuck out of the medical center again, love. You promised me you wouldn't do that kind of stuff anymore. You swore on ramen. The mental yell from his wife froze him mid-motion. Now, Rev, love. I was perfectly fine. We agreed if I was fine I didn't have to sit and wait. He felt her enter the room and opened his eyes, seeing her march past the gathered crowd. Don't you try and use your logic with Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Rokendaime Hokage or not, I will whip you from here to Konoha. Naruto deactivated the blade. He tried to think of a way out of sleeping on the couch. Revan, however, looked around and then smirked as she turned back to him. Well, since you're up and about, let's spar now that you have a lightsaber. When we're done, we'll work on making your own. Naruto nodded and moved back to the center of the mat. Revan was shielded and he sighed, knowing he was going to get his kicked. Wonder where I can get milk chocolate here. He wondered as she drew her two lightsabers and they activated with a dual snap hiss, the purple and red blades humming as she took up her stance. Naruto reactivated the double-bladed orange lightsaber, and smiled seeing his wife's quirked eyebrow. No, she said and he pouted. But, it's a good color. He said. It's orange. We talked about this, she said as he took up his own stance. Revan could feel some of the council entering the chamber and she saw the pair of master and Padawan from when she arrived. Ready, love? Revan sent. Yeah, full out. Naruto's voice came back to her as they circled. Yeah, let's show them how to do this. Revan's mental voice barely finished when she lunged. Obi-Wan Kenobi's eyes widened as he watched the pair. He'd watched the blonde when he began going through his forms. He'd never seen anyone in the temple chose the double-bladed lightsaber. He had to admit, the unknown knight was something to see. When the woman from earlier arrived and spoke, Obi-Wan knew that they were speaking like master and apprentice. But didn't she say he was her husband when they arrived? Obi-Wan was confused. Qui-Gon was next to his apprentice and could feel the confusion and knew the younger man had many questions. He found his eyes watching the pair as the lightsabers clashed. He had to admit, the blonde was very good, and Revan was truly a master of the saber arts. Up a notch? The blonde asked and Qui-Gon watched as she nodded using the force to try and shove the blonde back, but he had leapt high into the air, spinning about and to everyone's shock was standing on the ceiling. Come on up, Reverend, he said making a motion, and the gathered masters, knights and Padawans watched as Revan performed the same force leap and spun about stood on the ceiling, continuing their duel. Impossible. Master Took said watching them. Everyone leapt back when Revan lost her purple lightsaber when the blonde did a series of spins. Everyone leapt back as the blade fell, but relaxed as it deactivated long before it got to head level. They watched as they added kicks and several fighting styles. The blonde lost his footing when Revan delivered a wicked headbutt that knocked him from the ceiling. He fell and flipped landing in a crouch, the double blade deactivated. So, that's how it's going to be. He growled and Revan nodded and to the shock of everyone stuck her tongue out and blew a raspberry at him, before leaping straight at him, coming towards him like an avenging angel, her red-bladed lightsaber leading the way. The blonde waited for the last moment and the double blade snapped to life as he spun, using his momentum to knock her around. Revan flipped and landed, her blade before her. They met one another in the middle of the mat once more, and after a flurry of moves, Revan with a flip kick knocked the lightsaber from the blonde's hands. She used the force to send it flying. To the shock of the crowd, she wasn't done as she swung her blade at the blonde's head, but he did a back flip away. He stopped and smiled. Oh, it's on now, believe it, he said, and the gathered Jedi watched as he put his hands in a strange cross position. Revan her eyes and saw the fox-like grin on her husband's face. Ah, hell. Mass shadow clone jutsu. The blonde roared and the mat soon showed a dozen clones. Hey Rev-chan, they said in unison. Revan watched as one of the clones handed Naruto her lost saber. Get her, Naruto yelled. Revan knew she was going to have to work hard for this one. Around the mat sputters of shock and surprise as the blonde performed something they had never seen. Master Took spoke up. Sith technique. Get the younglings away from here. Stay they will, Yoda said, countering the history master. Master Yoda, that is not a Sith technique. Yoda said, his own gaze watching as Revan called on the force to fight off the horde of blondes. Much can be learned from Naruto Namikaze, it seems. Revan was in constant motion, slicing through the clones that were going up rapidly, until she met resistance in the form of her own purple lightsaber. Hey wife, Naruto said with a grin. Miss me? Hardly, she said, and once more they were in motion. Right, left, center, overhand, underhand, diagonal. The gathered Jedi were surprised. None could remember the last time they'd seen such a duel. Obi-Wan looked at his master. Are they trying to kill one another? No, they are so attuned to the force they know what the other is doing. Qui-Gon Jinn said. But even so, some of those blows are too close, a moment's hesitation and one of them will die. Revan smiled and did something that Naruto wasn't prepared for. She got under his guard and grabbing the front of his shirt pulled him into a deep kiss. The purple lightsaber deactivated as his hands went to her hips. Qui-Gon raised an eyebrow and chuckled while Obi-Wan went beet red. Most unorthodox way to win. His master chuckled. Many in the room were uncomfortable with the display. Master Yoda's chuckle could be heard, as could Obi-Wan's, don't they need to breath. Revan finally let her husband go, and smiled seeing the dazed look in his eyes. I win, she said using the force to retrieve her saber and clip them both to her belt. She turned and saw that many of the masters were now ushering Padawans and younglings from the room. Almost reminds me of the time Iruka asked us to demonstrate a duel and Naruto did that to me. I don't recall ever seeing Iruka ever turn that shade before, but some of knights and masters here look like they could put him to shame. Seeing Yoda and Mace Windu, she smiled and gave a slight bow. Well played, Master Revan, Yoda said. Yeah, well, it's not something you can learn in the temple, she said with a grin and saw her husband coming out of his daze. She felt the laughter and saw the pair from before. Hello. The older of the pair gave a slight bow. Qui-Gon Jinn, and my Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Most impressive display between you and your Padawan. Revan Namikaze, and he's my husband, not my Padawan. So he's a knight then? Obi-Wan asked. His curiosity was screaming at him to find out all he could of the pair. No, Naruto's never been trained in the Jedi arts. But from his world, he is an accomplished ninja and a former leader amongst his people. Not trained, but, Obi-Wan looked as Naruto was putting the borrowed lightsaber away, a grin on his face. Revan laughed. On his world they have many skills and abilities that make what we do with the Force seem tame. They can control and manipulate the elements. They use a form of spiritual energy called chakra. She said. During my time amongst them, I learned how to harness it. Granted, I'll never be anywhere near my husband's chakra capacity. He of course has more than 200 people. 3. The turn to see Naruto standing there with a grin. On the chakra scale Tsunade Ba-chan performed, I have more than 300 people combined, and that's before I tap into what the fox left me. He said scratching the back of his neck seeing all the eyes upon him. Needless to say, Naruto is a juggernaut in battle. You fight many? Obi-Wan asked. Naruto looked sad. Far too many. His eyes took on a faraway look and the more skilled masters knew that was a look of a veteran. Yoda broke the silence. Master Revan, assistance we require from you and your husband. Revan looked at the head of the council. Master, Naruto asked and she could hear the teasing in his grin, even though her back was to him. Stow it, love, or you'll sleep on the couch, she said. Naruto mock pouted then grinned. But you never let me sleep there alone. Revan sighed. She hated to admit it, but he was right. Every time I banish him to the couch, I can't sleep and join him, which then leads to more strenuous activities. Naruto saw the blush and his fox-like grin got even bigger. Yoda ignored the byplay. Ask that you team up with Master Qui-Gon and his Padawan on duties. It would be beneficial to both sides. You would have guides in a universe that has changed since your last time here, and they would benefit from both of yours experience. Revan looked at Naruto who shrugged. They didn't use the link as they thought it was rude to do it around others, remembering Ino's screams every time they would hold conversations and laugh or blush while out for dinner with her and Choji. Naruto. Not like we really have pressing matters, Rev. He answered. Nor a ship. Revan muttered. Naruto nodded as he got the mental picture of the ship. Revan looked at Yoda. We accept with the knowledge that we can leave when we wish, and decline missions that we don't want. Yoda nodded his head. Naruto was looking at him. Who's the frog? Revan laughed while the rest of the council looked shocked at his question. Qui-Gon turned his head trying to hide his own smirk. Obi-Wan looked scandalized that someone would insult Master Yoda about it, even more. Master Yoda chuckled. Much to learn, young Namikaze. Yes, much to learn. Yoda said once everyone had gathered themselves, his eyes on Revan who still smirked. Learn. He shot a look at Revan. Some of the things I taught you before we left Konoha. Naruto nodded. Actually, a lot of the things Revan taught me or tried to teach me I can't use. Meditation sure, but I don't have her connection to the Force. The others looked surprised. Naruto is sensitive due to certain things that have happened to him long ago. As you can see, he is able to wield a lightsaber. But what of the standing on the ceiling are those duplicates? Obi-Wan asked. His speed. Revan smiled. Those are part of his abilities. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, gaijutsu are just some of the disciplines from his world. She looked at Naruto, then at the masters. I think it's best if we give them a demonstration of your skill, sweetie. Naruto smiled. Yes, dear, he said, and she swiped at him, but he used a kawarimi to swap himself out with a log. What? How? Obi-Wan, the most outspoken of the group, was shocked. They heard laughing and looked around. Revan pointed up and Naruto was on the ceiling once more. That was the simplest ability all students of the Ninja Academy use. A substitution jutsu, which allows us to swap out with items or even people if you're strong enough. Where'd the log come from? Obi-Wan asked while the masters watched on. Oh, Rev. Naruto asked, scratching the back of his neck, and looked at his wife for an explanation. Men, she muttered. I had some wood stored in the hold of the ship. You instinctively reached out for it as it was something you're most familiar with. I'm sure in time you'll find something new around here. Naruto smiled and dropped from the ceiling, landing on his feet. Academy students also learn a henge, or transformation jutsu. Naruto put his hands in the seal, and with a puff of smoke where Naruto stood, now was a perfect replica of Master Yoda. Naruto over time has come a long way. He no longer needs to say the name, and nearly all his jutsus that require hand seals he can now do one-handed. Revan said as Obi-Wan and the others were studying the Naru Yoda. Fascinating, Obi-Wan said as he reached out to touch it. A puff of smoke and Naruto was back. The low-level ones can be dispelled with a simple touch. Naruto said. Another skill learned at the Ninja Academy is the Bunshin, or body-splitting jutsu. The Academy version isn't solid, but an illusion. Naruto, however, has way too much chakra, and thus can't perform it. Revan performed it and whispered the name, and with a puff 3 replicas were next to her. Obi-Wan reached out and his hand passed through it, and then it went up in a puff of smoke. However, my darling husband can perform a type of bunshin that not many can do without feeling a drain on their chakra, or personal energies. Naruto put his hand in the cross-seal position. Shadow clone jutsu. Naruto roared, giving Revan a wink before the whole room was covered in smoke. As it cleared, the council of masters were shocked, as were Ki-gon and Obi-Wan. Ceiling, floor and walls were covered with what looked like 1,000 Naruto clones. And if you're impressed by this isn't even a tenth of the clones he can generate before he feels tired. Revan said. Her mind remembered the battle for the waterfall village when Orochimaru and Sasuke tried to steal their secrets. Naruto had rushed to the aid of his friends there, and with just himself and Jiraiya at the time fought off the Sound's invasion. One clone giggled when Obi-Wan poked it, and it slapped his hand. Quit it, that tickles. They're solid, Obi-Wan said, surprised, even after witnessing them against Revan earlier. Okay dear, put your clones away, she said, and they watched as Naruto dispelled them in groups of 10. Why not all at once? Obi-Wan asked after watching this for a bit. The downside is that you remember what the clone does. Naruto learned the hard way of information overload and spent a week in a coma. Granted, when he woke up he had the whole Konoha library in his head, and the headache to prove it. The original Naruto snorted. Tsunade Ba-chan told me if it had been anyone else they never would have woken up from that coma, or waken up dead of a brain aneurysm. Obi-Wan looked at Ki-gon and mouthed, woke up dead. Ki-gon had a smile on his face and leaned in close to his Padawan. Turn of phrase, my Padawan. I've heard some similar phrases on the lower sections of Coruscant or Outer Rim worlds. I can do a max of 10 clones, but I feel exhausted after. Revan told the masters. And that was nearly with 40 years training up my own chakra reserves. Is there anything else? One of the masters asked. Naruto shrugged. A lot of my jutsu are combat related, and even more of them are on the destructive side of the surrounding area, that and Rev's forbidden me doing them indoors. And good reason. You flooded the lower levels of the Hokage Tower when you used that sweetened jutsu to clean the upper levels. Naruto chuckled. Ah, but Ibiki said it's the cleanest the interrogation rooms have ever been after that. Revan growled. You and him, I told Tsunade that was a bad idea to allow you two to work together on anything. But I was the Hokage. And yet, you acted like you were. A cough brought them out of their verbal sparring. Sorry, Master Yoda. She shot her husband a look. We will talk about that later. Naruto just sighed. I just can't win. The blonde thought. Now then, why don't you spend some time familiarizing yourself with the temple, and ask Obi-Wan and Master Ki-Gon for assistance? Revan nodded. And we need my vault. Naruto needs a lightsaber of his own. Too old, one of the masters began, and Revan looked at him. I wasn't asking, I was merely informing. She shot Yoda a look and he nodded. Welcome to the use of a workroom and the archives, you both are. Yoda got the others to leave and Naruto was standing, his fingers laced behind his head. Any place decent to eat that don't have goop? He asked Obi-Wan, and Revan laughed. I swear you and Choji must be related. She finally said after stopping chuckling. Could be. Naruto started then finished with a shrug before looking at his wife. They don't have ramen. Revan smiled. I'm sure we can find something close. She said before looking at the master and Padawan before her. Gentlemen, lead the way. Dex's Diner. How often do you come here? Revan asked Obi-Wan, who shot his master a look. More than I was supposed to. Obi-Wan confesses with a shrug at Ki-Gon smiles. I know when you snuck out. He admitted, and Obi-Wan sighed, figuring his one act of defiance hadn't really mattered in the end. I like the Jawa juice. He said. Naruto and Dex got on very well, and after Naruto described ramen to the basilisk, Dexter Jetster liked the blonde who described his favorite dishes, and Dex found suitable substitutes, and soon the Jedi were watching as Naruto inhaled the noodles. Revan, watching her husband, shook her head and laughed as he chalked up another bowl. You know, you're going to regret offering to buy him lunch, she said, sipping her Juma juice. Ki-Gon watched as another bowl was brought by the robo-waitress. How much can he eat? The master asked, his eyes following Naruto's movements, which seemed like a blur. Well, she looked at Naruto. Anywhere from 15 bowls to 50. 50. Obi-Wan said in shock. Revan shrugged. His metabolism and the amount of energy he uses gives him such an appetite. She smiled. The few times I cooked a picnic lunch, I usually started early in the morning to get it all ready by lunch, but then he would show manners. Naruto looked up and quirked an eyebrow at her. Revan laughed. Don't give me that look, Naru-kun. You are a glutton when it comes to ramen. I remember Aruka crying about your celebration to Chunin. He had to take 3 missions to cover that bill. Naruto swallowed his last bite and looked at her. Yet you haven't mentioned your near criminal record in regards to Paki. She smiled. I'm your wife, I'm allowed to pick on you, and as a loving and devoted husband you're not supposed to mention my imperfections. Naruto shrugged. He looked at the stack of empty bowls, then at Revan. She shook her head and he sighed. Fine. But we can come back, right? Revan laughed before looking at Ki-Gon. I'll cover this, you weren't prepared for the black hole that's his stomach. He nodded and she went to pay for the lunch. Obi-Wan watched as Naruto stood and stretched. Ah, that was good. So, other than that room, is there somewhere that we can practice that they won't mind getting a bit thrashed? Exercise. Obi-Wan said in surprise. How can you even move after eating all that? Naruto smiled. That was nothing. Naruto waved it off. Revan looked at Ki-Gon. So, how do you wish to go about this? The male master shrugged. We take things as they come. Revan smiled. We're going to get along fine. But I was talking about the tour. Coruscant has changed in 4,000 years, some landmarks are the same, but, she looked at the skyline filled with cruisers and speeders. Come, I think we'll start with the need to know places and work on down from there. He said and turned and stopped, seeing his Padawan in a headlock and Naruto running his knuckles over his skull. Say it, Naruto. Revan yelled and the blonde stopped in mid-nagi. But Rev, he insulted ramen and then. I did not. I just said eating all those noodles can't be healthy. Obi-Wan protested. See. Revan sighed. My husband is such a man-child at times. She muttered, and with the Force separated Naruto from Obi-Wan. Sorry, gentlemen, he gets energetic after eating so much, and sleeping, and, sigh, alright, he's a stamina freak, but that's one of his good qualities. Revan smiled as her man hung in the air, scratching the back of his head. You going to put me down nicely, or will I need to bring up certain issues? The blonde asked, and Revan scowled. You puke on me and I swear I'll use your guts to paint the temple. Naruto laughed as she finally released him, the two Jedi and the patrons watching the strange pair. Naruto looked at Dexter. I'll be back for more, that was awesome food. Dex smiled. Always welcome, you'll be, lad. Any friend of Obi-Wan's. The said Padawan lowered his head. Dex. The basilisk waved him off. You saved my hide. Besides, they're good people, keep close to them. He said, patting the Padawan on the shoulder and giving Ki-gon a nod. Is that natural? Obi-Wan asked as they saw Naruto atop a building. Back on his world, Naruto would find the highest point and watch the sunset. He's confused, and worried. Revan said. They had wandered the city and Revan would point out some things that were similar. She saw species, and there were times she missed old friends she knew were long gone. She saw Naruto, his inquisitive eyes taking in things, and then he would see a being or something that would cause him to remember his friends. She sighed. He will outlive them all, he's not even hit his first millennium. It was near sundown that Naruto had leapt from building to building, climbing higher. Revan and the Jedi followed in a speeder and were now hovering off to the side. Revan could feel his pain and conflict. He had the door closed and she knew he didn't want to talk. He'd been like that after Jiraiya's passing. Ki-gon touched her elbow. She turned and gave him a smile. He's mourning. He knows he'll never see his friends, his precious people again. We left his world and he was unconscious for it. He never got the chance to say goodbye. And I never told him. It took years to reach Coruscant from the unknown regions with micro jumps to lightspeed. She looked at the sun as it kissed the horizon. I spent time in meditative trances and working on keeping the ship in motion. Why didn't you stop at any of the worlds between here and there then? Obi-Wan asked. Revan smiled. Fear. I was afraid what I would find. Afraid that the Jedi would be no more. Afraid that I was rushing my one reason in the galaxy on a wild goose chase. I thought that even should the Jedi be wiped out again, I thought the archives always survive. She looked at Ki-gon then. Coruscant was brought to its knees when I was a child. Structures leveled to the ground, but with the vaults and that built to the core, the only way for things to be destroyed fully would be to blow up the planet. I knew that even if the Jedi were gone, the holocrons would be here. Qui-Gon Jinn looked at Revan then. You would have spent years in study to find a cure if the healers hadn't been here. He said. Revan nodded. Shaking her head, she watched as Naruto tilted his head as the wind whipped about him. He is my strength. I'd been alone for so long, and then I met him. He was loud, obnoxious, and his presence sang in the Force so loudly, it was like being cradled in love and warmth. Revan smiled as they sat in the workroom. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon had gone off to work on saber forms. Revan watched as Naruto constructed his lightsaber. Not going with the double-bladed? She asked, noticing the handle. Naruto shook his head. I kind of like having a free hand for jutsus, he said as he connected wires. You picked out your lens and crystals? Revan asked, staying by the wall. Yeah, Obi-Wan was surprised when I pulled out that pearl. Naruto said. He was biting his lip as he worked slowly putting the inside components together. Revan refused to let him use any pre-assembled parts of any kind. I got that pearl 4,000 years ago when I helped kill a crate dragon on Tatooine. I never felt right using it. Naruto thought about using Tsunade's necklace, but he couldn't part with it, the comfortable weight around his neck. I'm surprised you didn't use that orange crystal. Revan teased. Was Naruto's response as he finished the controls and slipped it into the cylinder before grabbing a lens, an emitter, a smaller stone that Revan said was the power source. Trust me, You won't have the problem of it running out of power or shorting out at a bad time, she said. The slender green stone reminded Naruto of the one around his neck. They are Solarian shards, Revan admitted. My people would use them to power everything from vehicles, to droids, to small appliances. Naruto turned to his wife. You okay? He asked. She nodded. You? No, but as long as I have you, I'll get better every day. He said and stood and pulled her into a hug. Revan melted against him. I should be used to it by now. She whispered into his shoulder as he stroked her hair. As long as we live, those we knew and loved will always be remembered. Mourn, but don't drown in it. He continued to hug her. It hits me at the damnedest times. Revan said. Naruto said nothing. He did what he always did when his wife got like this, he held her, and supported her. She rarely talked about her home world, like he avoided his early years before he became a ninja. Are you avoiding finishing your lightsaber, love? Revan asked after nearly 10 minutes of being held in the arms of the man she loved. Naruto chuckled. I just remember your stories of a badly built saber blowing up in the owner's face. Revan pulled back and her left hand stroked his cheek. You never screw up, smiles well, on things that are important anyways. Naruto mock scowled. Gee, thanks. She kissed his chin. Go and finish it, then we'll go to bed. But I'm not tired. Naruto complained. Who said it was to sleep? Revan said, slipping from her lover's arms and fading into the shadows. Now, back to work. Naruto sighed. She always does that to me, winds me up and slips away. Her laughter from the shadows told Naruto what he already knew, that his wife did it on purpose. Of course, the love-making afterwards is beyond description. Blonde thought as he sat back down at the bench, the grin never leaving his face, his fingers slipping components together as if he'd built the lightsaber 100 times. From her shadowed view, Revan smiled. Force-sensitive beyond measure, his senses are better than anyone's and he might not have many force powers, but the ones he uses without thinking put masters to shame. She watched with a grin on her own face that matched her husband's. Better have water nearby. Last time we were both dehydrated. Naruto smiled as he entered the training dojo that morning. Many noticed the ear-to-ear grin on his face, but he wasn't looking at them. In his hand was his newly constructed lightsaber. It wasn't the completion of the weapon that had the smile on his face. While it was a happy moment, it wasn't the cause of the smile. He'd spent the night making love to his wife, and the fact she was having issues rising from their bed was. I did good. Naruto thought with a grin after kissing her awake and leaving her to curse him for her inability to stand. Walking yet love. He sent through the bond. The snarl had him laughing outright. He stopped seeing Obi-Wan sitting meditating. Hey, Naruto said, dropping down into his own lotus position, hands on knees. Obi-Wan looked at him. Good morning, you're happy. Naruto smiled even more. Had a good night. Obi-Wan noticed the lightsaber on the mat between them. You finished it already? He asked in surprise. Yeah, Rev's a task mistress when it comes to things like this. But you were building it from scratch, with no pre-manufactured parts. Obi-Wan said in surprise. Have you activated it? Once. I was going to come here and test it out, but she turns on smoothly. She? Obi-Wan asked, quirking an eyebrow. Naruto laughed. Bad habit from my world. Weapons were given names or even personal identifying marks. Obi-Wan looked and Naruto, seeing the question, nodded and watched as the brunette picked up the hilt and looked it over. What are these runes? Obi-Wan asked, noticing the marks around the grip. This one running down the side says, the will of fire. It's a phrase someone precious to me believed in. Naruto said, his mind flashing to Sarutobi Ojiazan, his first precious person. He was the leader of my village, and the first person to ever care about me. Obi-Wan felt the flash of pain. I'm sorry. Naruto waved off the apology. Nothing to be sorry for. He lived a long life and he died protecting the village like the Hokage he was. What's this one? Naruto looked at the next set of lines and smiled. My personal nindo. Never give up. It was something I told myself giving up. Obi-Wan was amazed at the attention that had been put into the weapon in his hands. And this one? Naruto blushed. That one is personal and I won't translate it. Looks like Rev added something as well. The blonde thought, seeing the runes. To my beloved. The force binds us forever, Rev. Obi-Wan looked at the strange seal at the bottom of the lightsaber. What's this? Ah, a seal to prevent it from being damaged. Really? That's not possible, is it? Obi-Wan asked. Naruto nodded. Use yours and see. I couldn't, if I damaged it. Then it's back to the drawing board. Naruto said, motioning for him to go ahead and do it. Obi-Wan stood and picked up his own lightsaber that was next to him. It activated with a snap hiss and the blue blade hummed. Go ahead, Ben. Naruto said, and Obi-Wan paused. What? What do you mean what? Naruto asked. You called me Ben. The Padawan said. Hey. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Nickname. The Padawan sighed and lightly touched the hilt on the floor with his blue blade. He raised an eyebrow when nothing happened. He put more pressure and still nothing. He deactivated his own and knelt, touching the lightsaber hilt on the floor. It's still cool, he said in surprise. Cool, it worked, Naruto said as he picked it up. He stood and smiled, thumbing the activation switch. The pearl white blade sprang to life with the snap hiss, and Naruto smiled as the blade hummed. He stepped away from Obi-Wan and gave it several practice swings and then deactivated it. What happened next surprised Obi-Wan as the hilt vanished with a slight poof. Did it explode? Are you okay? The Padawan asked, rushing to his friend's side. Naruto grinned. I'm fine, Ben. I put a storage seal on my wristband. Naruto showed him the piece of cloth with a seal on it. This way it can't be taken away. I plan to add the seal to my others on my arm later, but I wanted to make sure everything else was working fine first. You can store things on you like that? Obi-Wan asked in surprise. Naruto smiled as a poof later he was holding 3 kunai in his hand. Oh yeah, I learned how to do this on my training trip with Ero Sanin. He taught my dad and then me. Obi-Wan didn't understand all of it, but Naruto was proud of his accomplishments. I can make you one if you want. Naruto offered, and Obi-Wan looked at him in surprise. But, don't I need, blast, what did you and Master Revan call it? Chakram. Chakra. And everyone has chakra, even a friend of mine had it, he just couldn't use it for anything as his chakra paths were damaged. But he could still do ceiling scrolls, tree climb and leaps. Naruto missed Lee. The taijutsu master had been Naruto's friend when younger and his personal bodyguard when he became Hokage. Lee had passed on in his sleep after contacting a strange disease that destroyed his muscles and finally stopped his heart. Lee had a good life, and his son Gon showed he was just like his mother and father. Besides Ben, once I place the seal tattoo you won't need to worry about it as it will tie into your system. Okay, why the nickname? And why Ben? Obi-Wan asked. A laughter had both turn. Naruto smiled seeing Revan standing there, her hair down, a brush in her hand. Morning, love, he said, kissing her cheek. What do you need? My hair. You remember the deal, she said, and Naruto nodded as he walked her to the seats, and as she knelt he sat behind her and took the brush. Obi-Wan watched the pair. Naruto started brushing his wife's hair. Revan, seeing him watching, smiled. We have a deal. I was going to cut it shorter, but he likes running his hands through it, so I told him if I kept it long, then he would have to help its upkeep. Naruto ran the brush through her hair and smiled. It's relaxing as well. Revan smiled, and Obi-Wan bet she would purr. And his nicknaming you and Ben, it's simple really. The Jedi Master said as she allowed her husband to brush her hair, the three of them ignoring the others watching from around the room. Naruto gives nicknames to people he likes and trusts. As for Ben, I took the B from your first part of your name and N sound from Wan, and thus you've been christened Ben. Naruto said with his trademark grin. Ignore the man-child behind me, I doubt he'll ever grow up. Naruto pinched the back of her neck. That's not what you were saying earlier. Obi-Wan got to see the Jedi Master blush. Tsunade's right, you are a brat. Revan said. Yeah, well, Ba-chan was a drunk, that, and I might be a brat, but I caught your attention, oh powerful Jedi. Revan nodded at that. The three sat in silence as Naruto brushed out her hair and then began to put it in a braid. Wait, your hair was shorter yesterday. Obi-Wan realized. Revan laughed. Actually, I used a ninjutsu to shorten it. I learned it from Tsunade and her apprentice Shizune. But when it's me and Naruto, I remove it and allow it to be its real length. Obi-Wan saw that the hair went down her back to the base of her spine. He watched as Naruto braided it with a practiced ease. I find it relaxing like this, Naruto answered. It allows me to just be. Revan smiled. He loses himself in the force when he does this. Like when he was making his lightsaber, or when he's making seals. She looked at Obi-Wan. Let him make you a storage seal. If you can, make a secondary lightsaber to keep there. She held up her arm, and Obi-Wan saw the seal that Naruto had on the band was on the back of her wrist. It wasn't even an inch in diameter. A poof later and Revan had her lightsaber in her hand. They can't take away what they can't grab, she said and tossed it aside. Obi-Wan watched as it vanished in a poof, and another poof it was back in her hand. Prevents another Force user from using the Force to block your attempts to retrieve it. Good advice. The three turned to see Qui-Gon approaching. Glad I found you, Master Revan. The council has asked that you and I run to Nar Shaddaa. Obi-Wan and Naruto can come with, or stay here. Stay here, Revan said. Naruto looked at her and she sighed. Nar Shaddaa is not a place I want to expose you to. It makes that dive in rice look like a resort. Love, you don't need to protect me, Naruto said as he continued to braid her hair. He looked up at Qui-Gon. You want me to do yours next? He said, seeing the man's messy ponytail. No, thank you, Revan smiled. My husband could have been a stylist. But Hokage was more fun, he said. Revan sighed. You caused enough havoc for the next 10 Hokages that follow you. Naruto smirked. I don't know. Konohamaru might actually surpass me. Revan groaned at that. He did like to imitate you. I think that's cause his contract with the monkeys is better than Oji-san's ever was. The two Jedi watched the pair, and Revan sighed. You can come, but you don't go anywhere without me or Qui-Gon. What about Ben? Revan sighed, but Qui-Gon spoke up first. I would prefer that you both stay close to us. Nar Shaddaa is a rough world under the control of the Hutts. It is a hive of scum and villainy. He looked at the two younger men, or young looking in Naruto's case. We must be cautious. Naruto looked around the freighter the council had booked them passage on. He looked at Revan, who sighed from her seat. I hate not having my own ship. She pouted and griped. Well, the one we came in was in no shape to fly anymore. Naruto said, patting her hand. Don't placate me, dear, she said. Naruto looked at Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Both were meditating. Why don't you do that? He asked his wife. Because I want to be tense. Tense keeps me alive, and since we're going to Nar Shaddaa, I want to be coiled and ready to strike. Naruto chuckled. You sound like Anko. Both smiled, remembering the snake mistress. The three of them became very close after Naruto's return, and Revan and Anko could be seen making many men jealous with their antics. When Anko had been murdered by Sasuke and Orochimaru, the two had mourned, buried her, and went on spree of destruction that sent Oto Nins running at the mere mention of their names. Rev, Naruto said softly. She looked into his eyes. When we decide on children, he whispered low so as not to draw the attention of the Jedi as they meditated, I want our first girl to be named Anko. Revan smiled and squeezed his hand. Me too. Then with a smile she asked. What about a son? Naruto smiled. Whatever you wish is fine with me. I have a few male role models, but none of them whose name I want to hear my wife yelling out in anger. Revan smiled. Just because most your male role models are perverts. Shika. Nah, the lazy bastard would be a curse to the kid. Zal. Revan said after a bit. Zal. Naruto asked, and she watched his mind tried to fit the name with those of people Revan told him about. After the Wookiee. And what's wrong with that? Revan asked. Nothing, dear. I thought you would have gone with that pilot you told me about, or that old coot. You leave my old coot alone. You had some of your own, and Ero Sanin was the youngest. Naruto smiled at that. Oji-san was the best. Ba-chan too. Sanin was like that annoying uncle you liked, but didn't want to tell others about. Revan nodded at that. You thinking of children love? She asked. Naruto shrugged. Watched the younglings with Master Yoda this morning while you were packing, and Ino and Choji's, or Lee's boy. Revan sighed. I can't believe Sakura did that. She married him, gave him a son, then ran off to join the Uchiha only to be killed by him. Gon's got his mother's hair, and thankfully not his father's eyebrows. Revan shuddered remembering the first time she saw Lee and Guy training. Gon's going to be a powerhouse. He's like a blend of you and Lee. Revan said remembering the little boy who declared her husband was his eternal rival and tried to beat him with a series of taijutsu moves he'd seen his father perform once. Naruto smiled and kissed her temple. He and Konohamaru will do fine leading Konoha. Saiko's the 7th Hokage. Revan looked at him. Are you okay with how we left? I'm really fine, Rev. Naruto said with another kiss to her temple. We were looking like we did when I was 20, while everyone was old and dying. It wasn't fair to them. He pulled out the necklace she gave him when they started dating. Thumbing the activation switch, the hollow image of the group photo came to life showing the people precious to Naruto gathered around him on his 20th birthday, before life altered and any of them had died on missions and/or. I have this, and I will always miss them, but you are my life and my soul. Revan kissed him and they heard a clearing of a throat to see Ki-Gon sitting there. Not in front of Obi-Wan, please. They turned to see the Padawan passed out with a dribble of blood. Revan realized why as she felt her husband's hand on her and realized she had straddled him some time during their short makeout session. Sorry, she said with an unrepentant grin. Ki-Gon chuckled. I do understand, it's the younger years have grown up in the temple and have been sheltered. Even with all the traveling I've done with him since he was 13, he's been rather sheltered to some things. Naruto grinned. Really? Revan groaned and just knew poor Obi-Wan was going to get raised like no Jedi before. She poked her husband on his nose. I better not see that jutsu. Naruto grinned and nodded his head. I promise Revheim, you won't see my first jutsu ever created. Revan shuddered and wondered if warning Obi-Wan ahead of time would help the boy. What jutsu? Ki-Gon asked rising from his position and taking a seat across from them after casting a look at his Padawan and seeing him beginning to recover. My husband when he was 11 years old and fresh out of the academy was experimenting with a high-level forbidden technique when he messed up a hand sign and used a henge to turn into what translates into a centerfold. A very attractive woman with wisps of smoke covering certain key body parts, then he looks cutely at the male and giggles. Ki-Gon's eyes had become glassy, and Revan slapped her hand to face and dragged it down. Damn it. Jedi celibacy. She muttered and finger flicked her husband. I forbid that technique in the temple. Naruto snickered. I want you to solemnly swear Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. She said. Naruto looked her right in the eye. I solemnly swear that I won't use it at the temple when you're around. He finished and Revan felt a shudder run up her spine. Jedi Temple Council Chamber. 7 masters were gathered when they felt something that caused them all to shiver. I felt a terrible disturbance in the Force. Mace Windu said. Kai Moon-Di who nodded. Yoda sat there and he knew what the disturbance was, he could feel it in his ears that Revan's husband was going to turn the temple on its side. Take younglings on training trip perhaps, safe it would be, safer than to be here when Namikaze Naruto returns. The venerable Jedi Grand Master thought, not bothering to warn his fellow masters of what he'd learned from Revan's holocron about her time in Konoha or about Naruto. Force has a sense of humor, it does. Chuckling to himself, Yoda didn't see the looks from the other masters who were wondering what the oldest amongst them, besides Naruto and Revan, was laughing to himself about. Nar Shadda. The 3 Jedi and 1 ninja left the spaceport. Naruto wrinkled his nose and looked at his wife. It stinks. She nodded and knew for him with his heightened senses the smuggler's moon had to be as bad as the sewers of some of the larger towns they'd traveled to before his time as Hokage. Breath in through your mouth and out your nose, and for Kami's sake don't talk to anyone. Most the inhabitants will stab you in the back to rob your corpse. Naruto growled at a man in rags who was inching close to them. Why aren't the Jedi doing something about this? He asked. Revan sighed. Nar Shaddaa has been like this even 4,000 years ago. You can't force change on those who don't like the status quo. Revan said as she and Naruto followed Ki-gon and Obi-Wan. So, see anything similar? Naruto asked his wife, his hand staying near the kunai holster on his waist, while his other hand he kept free to summon his lightsaber in a moment's notice. Well, a lot of the buildings have been replaced over time, but south of here is the refugee sector. There's the docks, the Jek-Jek-Tar, an alien bar that you best avoid as it's filled with gases that will eat your lungs without a spacesuit. Naruto nodded. To the north we have several ship mechanics on various levels, bar, Pazak dens, swoop, she paused. Ki-gon. Yes. The other master said looking over his shoulder as he'd been talking with Obi-Wan. Do they still have swoop racing? She asked. It's been replaced by pod racing, they use powerful turbine engines to pull a pod now. He answered. They hold them all over, I saw one near the outer rim not too long ago. Revan sighed. I liked swoop racing. Perhaps I can get a swoop bike and take you out on it. She said to Naruto as they passed several buildings. Bounty Hunters Guild. Revan said with distaste. More often than not they have been paid to hunt and kill Jedi due to some crime boss with an ego and too many credits. Naruto looked around and pointed, what's that? Revan looked and scowled. Something you'll avoid if you want to keep a happy marriage. She growled. Naruto blinked. Where did Jiraiya want to take you for research, and leave me in the hotel room? Revan prompted her husband. She knew he wasn't dumb, but he usually blocked useless memories that would need prompting to renew. His eyes widened and he shook his head. I love my wife, and will never need a place like that. Naruto said, but then it was ruined with his grin as he leaned in and whispered to her, but maybe I can send Ben in there. Revan groaned. No. She hissed. You will not corrupt such a youngling. He's got to be nearly 20 love. Naruto said. He looked ahead and saw the Jedi were entering what he assumed was a cantina from the signs. I think we fell behind. Revan looked and nodded. Our contact is to meet us in there. Now, you have the credits I gave you. She asked and Naruto nodded. I swear, she does this every time we go somewhere. Like I'm a little kid. I tell you, forget something one time, and they never let you forget. The blonde thought, but kept his mental link closed, knowing from past experience that if she heard that he would have a lot of groveling to do. And remember, you and Obi-Wan are to watch out for one another. Sigh, yes dear. Naruto said as she adjusted the poncho he wore as he refused to wear Jedi robes. And remember, many beings use blasters and won't hesitate to shoot to kill for the stupidest mistakes. Revan continued as Obi-Wan came back out and headed towards them. Gee, can I go out and play now, mother hen? Naruto asked his wife. I'll be fine, Rev. I was Hokage after all and I am quite capable of protecting myself. Revan ignored him as she looked at Obi-Wan. You have your comlink? She asked the Padawan who nodded. Revan kissed Naruto on the cheek. Have fun, boys. See you both in 2 hours. She said and walked away. Naruto shook his head. Ben, if you ever get married or get into a relationship, remember they are always right and agree to everything they say until they are out of sight, then do what you were planning to do anyways. Naruto said, throwing an arm around the younger man's shoulder. Now, Revan mentioned once there were places to pick a fight in an arena, any idea where they would be? Ki-gon and Revan watched their contact leave. That was a waste of time. Revan said with a hint of disgust. The other master sighed and nodded in agreement. All we learned is that someone is planning something vague near the outer rim. Revan snorted. The outer rim is always a hotbed for galactic events. Glad to see something haven't changed. Ki-gon sipped his mineral water. I wonder what Obi-Wan and your husband have gotten up to. Revan shrugged. Love, what you doing? Nothing came back. Revan tried several more times and she felt something across the bond, she hadn't felt that since. Her eyes snapped open. I'm going to kill him. She growled, rising and was heading for the door with Ki-gon several steps behind. She stopped as her eyes focused on the wall screen. Oh my, Ki-gon said, seeing footage from the duel arena where a new fighter was taking on 3 of the top-ranked fighters at once and winning. He is so sleeping on the couch for the rest of the week. Revan growled. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, you are in so much trouble, and don't shut me out. I know you can hear me. On the screen she saw the blonde fighter wince and then take down a Trandoshan with a spinning back brain kick. He's well skilled in the arts of unarmed combat, Ki-gon said. And considering the Trandoshan, the Gamorrean and the Rodian are armed with blades and blasters, if they don't kill him I will. Revan said and stalked out of the bar. She used her bond to find him. Ki-gon followed. Interesting, Master Yoda is right, there will be much to learn from them, and for Naruto to get my Padawan to do something like this, I like him already. The master thought as he followed the living legend down several levels. Oh hell yeah, Naruto yelled as he won his 3rd fight against something Ben had called a Twi'lek. Naruto thought the tails on the head and the way it looked made it look like it had a butthead. Naruto spun the staff he'd chosen around. He'd watched a few fights and while disappointed about the suppression field, he thought it would have been something cool to use back in Konoha between him and Lee in the younger days when the taijutsu specialist was burning brightly with the flames of youth, which always left a bruised Naruto wondering what mountain had fallen on him. Can we go now? Ben asked as Naruto returned to his spot and guzzled water. Go. Why? We're winning, Naruto said in protest. He hadn't used any of his jutsus and he barely been pushed with taijutsu. We can clean up here, he said. Obi-Wan sighed, but he did have to agree with his new friend. He'd placed a few bets on him after some encouragement from Naruto, who swore that if he lost he'd pay him back double. Thus far Obi-Wan was holding nearly 80,000 credits in 3 fights. Naruto crushed one of the best duelists in his first fight. Everyone bet on the other guy and Naruto waltzed over him as if he was a youngling, and he hasn't used the force or those abilities he showed back at the temple. Just be careful. Many of the beings here don't like to lose, he cautioned the blonde, who answered with a grin. But Ben, that just makes it more fun. Obi-Wan sighed. How can a man that's older than Master Ki-gon and I combined act like an undisciplined youngling 1 minute, but on the battlefield he's like Master Yoda? Oh, hey, there are 3 of them, Naruto said, watching a Gamorrean, a Trandoshan and a Rodian entered the duel ring. Be careful. This doesn't feel right, Obi-Wan cautioned. Naruto nodded as he felt the suppressor shut down and he looked to where the controller was and the being that Obi-Wan called a Quarren was missing. Suppressors down, Naruto said, and Obi-Wan felt the shields rise around the arena, meaning there was no escape. What should I do? Obi-Wan asked. Naruto spared him a look and grinned. Bet large on me kicking there. And with that he was moving. Naruto several blaster shots from the Rodian when he felt Revan's presence against his mental shields. He used the staff to knock out the Rodian and thus eliminated the blasters. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, you are in so much trouble, and don't shut me out. I know you can hear me. He couldn't contain the wince as he drilled the Trandoshan with a spinning back brain kick he learned from Lee after watching wrestling one night while the girls were out. It actually works, he thought with surprise as he rolled and scooped up the dropped vibro sword. Last thing I'm going to do is draw my lightsaber if I don't have to, he thought as he avoided the slow axe swipes from the pig man. He's fatter than Jirobe. Smells just as bad too. Naruto thought of the former member of the Sound 5. Naruto saw that the Trandoshan was back up and picked up its other blade. Better end this before Rev gets here. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but I needed to stretch somehow. The former Hokage sighed as he under the axe swipe and with a slash gutted the Gamorrean. The blade continued and blocked the overhand strike from the Trandoshan. Naruto got to his feet with ease while pushing the lizard being back as he did so. You 3 came in here to kill me, why? Naruto demanded as he attacked. Several bloody gashes littered the Trandoshan's arms. Paid to. You were winning too many fights. Nothing personal, Naruto growled. Oh, no, not at all, he said, holding his left hand behind his back and built up a low-level Rasengan. Took me forever to get it down to one hand without the clones. Well, Revan kept distracting me wearing that lingerie and nibbling on me all the time. Naruto smiled. My wife is a pervert, and I like it. Nothing personal, but I hear my wife coming. Naruto said as he felt the force wave that was his wife shoving through the crowd. So, game over. He used the blade to block the Trandoshan's blade up and then with his left he rammed the Rasengan into the creature's chest and sent it flying. The poor alien being hit the force field and with nowhere to go, the Rasengan drilled into him with no mercy. Naruto turned to see Obi-Wan collecting his winnings, and turn and walk into the glare of Revan who was followed by a semi-smirking Ki-Gon. As the field came down, Naruto winced as his wife's eyes spun towards him as she felt his mirth. Ah crap, I'm in trouble. He dropped the blade he'd picked up and took several steps back. Now, Rev, sweetie. Don't you sweetie me. You said you wouldn't enter duels like this anymore after that time in Iowa. Naruto winced. But there was no danger here, he said and winced as she levitated a blaster. This was set to kill Yubaka. Kill. Naruto winced as her voice got louder. He could hear bets taking place around the arena. Yep. She's going to kill me. Snort, I won't kill you love, but I am going to put you in Jedi boot camp. You are reckless, Revan's voice said. Ah, come on Rev. You and I both know I am too. Ah crap. Yes, undisciplined. I still can't believe you bluffed your way through council meetings as Hokage. Naruto smiled. Liberal use of Kage Bunshin and the fact that Shizune was a great help as a secretary and Moegi who trained with her was the same. Revan shook her head as she grabbed him by the ear and dragged him towards the exit. Several cat calls and applause from some of the females in the crowd had Revan fighting hard not to laugh. So, what? Naruto asked as they exited the lower-level arena. Did you have fun? She asked as Ki-Gon and Obi-Wan joined them. A blast, Naruto said with a grin. So, how much did we take? He looked at Obi-Wan. The Padawan looked at his master who crossed his arms and was smirking. 230,000 credits. Which you will not be keeping. Revan and Ki-Gon said at the same time. I told you to keep out of trouble. Revan saw her husband's mulish nature rising. And as Jedi, we live a life of poverty. Ki-Gon said reminding his apprentice. Ah come on. Naruto said looking at his wife who shook her head. Oh no you don't Naruto Uzumaki. You gave me your word. Naruto sighed. You said there are refugees. He asked. Come on. Revan said taking his arm. The Jedi followed the pair. Now this brings back memories. Revan said as they looked over the various crates that were homes to many of those in the sector. Naruto saw the state of men, women and children of numerous species. She saw the sadness in his eyes. In 4,000 years this is still the same. Revan said. Ki-Gon was speaking to the leader of the refugees. It is? Obi-Wan asked from next to the pair. Yeah, smells the same, the crates might be a bit newer, and some species I don't recognize, but it's the same. Naruto stood behind her and wrapped his arm around her waist. And you say the Republic has done nothing about this? It's in Hutt space. Revan said. They don't allow the Republic into their space without a lot of protest, and it's not costly to seek out trouble so they let the Outer Rim worlds fall apart without putting in effort. Obi-Wan wanted to argue, but while the Mid-Rim and Core worlds thrived, the Outer Rim worlds were ignored. So what? He stopped seeing Revan have a faraway look on her face. Is she okay? Naruto stepped around her and looked into her eyes. Rev. She blinked. Obi-Wan, stay with Ki-Gon. She took Naruto's hand. We need to find someone. Who? The Padawan asked. An old friend. Revan said and tugged her husband after her. We'll meet you back at the dock cantina. Rev, what? Naruto asked as she dragged him away leaving a curious Padawan wondering what just happened. They passed the Jekjektar, and Naruto wondered where his beautiful and determined wife was taking them. She stopped by a panel. He's here. I can't believe it, she muttered. Who? Naruto asked. Revan didn't answer but pulled out a pair of suits. Put this on. Revan, where are we going? He asked accepting the breathing suit. Into the Jekjektar. If I'm right we need to get to the back rooms and the private chambers below. I should have thought of it. She would have left him someplace secure. But why here? The Jedi Master muttered as she dressed in the breathing suit. Naruto saw she was determined as the day they rescued Konohamaru from the Mist Village after he'd been kidnapped during his Chunin test. Naruto listened to her and adjusted the suit like she told him, and then they entered the Jekjektar. What a wonderful smell you've discovered, Naruto remarked after they got below the alien cantina and into the tunnels, well away from the noxious gas. The tunnels were a maze of doors and fans. Revan was leading, she seemed to know where she was going. Naruto figured it was a connection to someone she knew. He held a kunai in his hand after they'd encountered a group of Kath hounds as Revan identified them. They might have escaped a transport, or were let loose down here, Revan said as they continued on. With his comment about the smell of the tunnels, Revan shot him a look. It smells better than that dive you took me to near the lake country when we entered that den and found hundreds of dead. Whoa, oh dear, she said, and they stopped outside a door. What? Naruto asked. This is going to take a while to cut through. There are no controls out here. Naruto nodded, and with a poof his lightsaber appeared in his hand and Revan's in hers. I love storage tattoos, she said, and the blades activated with a snap hiss, and the couple plunged their blades into the sealed door. You take me to such nice places, Rev, Naruto said. You're just mad cause I'm making you give up the money from your fight. Actually, I'm not, but I don't think Ben should be punished. I did drag him there, and he didn't fight. I'll speak to his master, Revan said as they slowly cut seals on the door. Naruto, she said, getting his attention as he continued to push the blade. What? I'm sorry about taking you away from your home. Everyone you knew. It's okay. You did the best you could. Besides, I think Ino was sick of seeing my bronze body in the peak of physical condition running around Konoha every morning while she looked olden. She didn't have wrinkles, dear, Revan said, defending her blonde friend. She was getting silver in her hair. Yeah, well, it was rough seeing them all age while I stayed looking 20-something. Naruto said. Naruto, Revan said. What? It took us a couple years as the ship's hyperdrive kept giving out. What took years? Naruto inquired. To get from Konoha to Coruscant, Revan said, and watched as Naruto froze, then sighed. I figured that, he said. He formed a familiar cross seal and two shadow clones appeared. Keep cutting, he said, handing them his and Revan's blades as he pulled his wife aside. I'm not mad or upset at you, he said, putting a hand on each of her shoulders. I can feel it through the bond. You thought I would be mad, didn't you? Yes, Revan said. It's just, I took you away from the only world you've ever known and thrown you into a galaxy with species that are beyond description. I mean, I know I'm your wife, but. No buts, Naruto said, taking her chin and making her look at him. Never doubt us. No matter what. You are my precious person, my reason to make myself better, the first thing I think about waking, the last thing I think about before I sleep. You are my heart and soul, Revan Namikaze, he said. If you want to stay with the Jedi and teach a couple generations, that's fine with me. If you want to move from planet to planet, that's fine. If you want to set up a diner and be a waitress, I can live with that. It doesn't matter where we are, or what we do, as long as you are there, I will adapt to any situation. He kissed her as behind them a pair of shadow clones continued to work. One looked at the other and grinned. Boss is gonna score tonight. Stow it, stupid, and keep cutting. The other one grunted, trying to ignore the kissing couple behind it. Done, the clones said as they returned the lightsabers, then vanished, being dispelled. Rev, if you would. Naruto motioned towards the cutout door. Work, work, work. I swear, men wouldn't be able to do anything without a woman around, she said with a grin, and with a force push sent the door flying inwards. Knock, knock. Avon calling, Naruto said, stepping through and stopping. Revan watched as he sniffed the air. It's stale, sour. I don't think anyone's been here for a long time, Naruto reported. Does it smell like my ship did when we went to work on it? Revan asked, and Naruto nodded. 1,000 years at least. She muttered, a deactivated lightsaber in her hand. This way. She pointed towards the left corridor and they walked, Revan scanning for traps with the Force and Naruto using his enhanced senses for the same task. A lot of beings died here, Naruto said. Revan nodded. A friend of mine was here upon her return. She had to fight a major crime boss who was trying to collect a bounty on her head. The exile? Naruto asked. Revan snorted. She hated that name. Jaina was an exile, but he returned. I looked up her files. She was still called exile after her return and she was a master on the Reformed Council. Revan shook her head. Jaina Kale, right? Naruto asked. Yeah, she was a friend from my time before the council erased my memories, then after she returned. Naruto paused. What is it? What is that? Naruto asked, pointing through a glass window to an arena below. A rancor, Revan said. Old one at that, she said, seeing the age lines on a fang. Someone put that here to guard whatever is behind those doors behind it. How is it fed? I mean, look at all the bones. Naruto asked. Look above. A trapdoor, bet it leads to the Jektar and they toss bodies down here after a fight to dispose of evidence. They don't even know what's here. Naruto shuddered. It's probably spent long periods hibernating. Revan continued, looking down into the arena. Well, I guess we'll have to either sneak past it or kill it. Revan said. Kill it? I need what's in that room. Revan said, looking at her husband, and he sighed at her resolve face, and knew he was in for a long night on the couch if he didn't agree. Fine. How? Revan sighed. I don't have any grenades, so this will have to be the hard way, I'm afraid. We'll fight it like we did the troll from Iowa. Naruto groaned. That thing hit hard. He looked at the beast below. Well, at least the rancor is better looking. They are about the same size. He thought. I get first crack? He asked, and Revan sighed. Don't come crying to me when he leaves you a smear on the ground. Naruto smiled and kissed her quickly. I won't. You're the best wife ever. Revan laughed as he skipped to the entrance and palmed the hatch release. She watched as the doors rumbled open and screeched from long inactivity. The rancor was awakened by that, and Revan stayed in the shadows, ready to aid her husband with the use of the Force should he need it. Meanwhile, I'm sorry, Master, Obi-Wan said, sitting across from his master. It's all right, Obi-Wan. I always wanted you to rebel somehow. It seems your friendship with Naruto will be good for you in the long run. The elder Jedi said with a smile, sipping his tea. Master, before you would never have tried to even visit a place like the duel arena. I want you to know that things aren't like they seem on the surface, but I'm afraid I've been remiss in teaching you of the more seedier places, as our duties have kept us in certain circles, and while many of them are dangerous and somewhat seedy, the places I'm sure Naruto will take you will show you the real face of the galaxy, not the political sugar-coated version most Jedi only see. Obi-Wan was silent. He's not what I expected, Master. Qui-Gon smiled. I find it fitting. He sipped his tea. When I was younger, before Dooku took me as his Padawan, I did a study on Jedi Knights who fell to the dark side. The history I learned about Revan fascinated me, and frightened me. A Jedi with such promise, such a prodigy, fell to the dark side. Her redemption was documented by several Jedi. Bastila Shan, Jolie Bindo, Master Vandar and others. They spoke of the Mind Wipe, the journey to find the Star Forge and stop Revan's former apprentice, Malik. Obi-Wan listened as his master spoke. The tale from start to finish. And then she left. She is the last of her kind in all the galaxy. Naruto Namikaze is immortal, how we don't know fully. I think the answer are in the holocron she handed to Master Yoda. We could ask him, Obi-Wan asked. Naruto doesn't seem to mind answering questions or speaking about his past. It is something we really don't need to know. Qui-Gon answered. His connection to the Force is amazing. The abilities he uses with that strange personal energy called chakra is equal to many things we can do with the Force. You mean like walking on walls? Qui-Gon smiled. Many of his abilities are new, and some are frightening. I know the talk of the temple was heated. Obi-Wan shook his head. Master Tuk and Master Guile both say he's a Sith Lord, and Revan's return will doom us all. Don't listen to that. You can look at both the Namakazes and see they shine so strongly in the light side of the Force. There is no trace of malice in either of them. Qui-Gon said. Obi-Wan nodded at that. While meditating on the trip, he'd seen them both in the Force. They shone brighter than the gas giant of the Yavin system. Master, what do you think they went to find? Obi-Wan asked. Something from Revan's past. Qui-Gon said. Revan looked at the remains of the rancor and sighed. You enjoyed that. Naruto smiled. What? It roared. I just wanted it to know it wasn't the biggest thing around with teeth. You shouldn't have summoned her. Stop. She does that to piss you off. Naruto said to his wife as he hopped off the remains of the rancor. I don't like her. Naruto wrapped his arms around his wife's midsection. I won't summon her again unless I really need to, promise. He finished nuzzling her neck from behind. Revan sighed. Not here. Now, let's see what keeps pinging my Force senses like that. The pair approached the door and Revan sent a Force push out, triggering the door release. I'll be damned, she said once the lights flickered on. Sitting there was a very battered, broken and rusted droid she thought she'd never see. Taking a step closer she stopped as a holocron on the floor sprang to life. Bastilla. Revan breathed seeing the woman who shared a bond with her. Hello Revan. Bastilla Shan, Jedi Master said, the silver in the hair and crow's feet around the eyes showed her age. You look like hell Ba. Revan said to the image of her sister Jedi, dead all these millennia. The holocron image shifted. And you look the same as you did when you left. No, you're happy, content, whole. Revan studied the image of the woman she shared a bond with. You made master. Hope you didn't bore your Padawans with rules and more rules. The holocron image laughed. Actually, I used you and Jaina as my idols. Revan missed the woman who she considered her sister. And who is this? The holocron asked. My husband. Bastilla. Meet Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Greetings Naruto. Hi. The blonde scratched the back of his head. The holocrons always unnerved him ever since he saw Revan's all those years ago. It has been a long time since my image has been called forth. Bastilla said. There are messages recorded in here for you Revan. Listen to them at your leisure. Why were you put here Bastilla? Revan asked. Jaina's idea. She thought you'd come to Nar Shaddaa sometime. HK-47 was deactivated after a brutal battle. None were able to fix him properly. Many didn't want to since he started to refuse even Jaina's orders. Revan looked at the droid. I built him so long ago. How long has passed? Bastilla asked. Over 4,000 years. Revan said. Then I'm afraid the Aben Hawk is probably no more. Canderous, sorry, Mandalore stored it on DXUN, but time on that moon will have ravaged it I'm afraid. Revan nodded. Now, collect this holocron, and your droid. We shall speak more when you wish. Thank you Ba. Revan said. Missed you brat. Bastilla said as the holocron shut down. Naruto picked it up while Revan went to the droid. Well, he asked seeing her looking at it. The frame was ruined, even he could see that. I can salvage his memory core and personality unit, but the body is beyond repair. Naruto watched as Revan pulled several tools from the kunai pouch she wore on her thigh. While Naruto carried weapons, his wife carried tools. He watched as she worked on scavenging parts and then separated the head from the droid's body. I'm amazed his head's intact. Revan said cradling it under her arm as she walked back to her husband. And you got upset when I carried Pain's head under my arm. Naruto muttered. Excuse me? Revan asked. Nothing dear. Naruto said as he followed his wife. The difference husband of mine, is that Pain's head was a bloody mess by the time you were done and when we got back to Konoha all the fluids had drained out and it was just smelling bad. She held up the droid's head. Huck's head is intact, not leaking fluids and when I get a chance I'll activate it and see what I can do about building him a new body. HK, wait, that crazy droid you always talked about. That HK. Revan smiled. Yes, that HK. He calls me meatbag I'll punt his head from here to Konoha. Revan smiled. I'll see what I can do, but no promises as it seemed to be programmed into every system and subsystem he had. The pair made their way back out. Naruto looked at the rancor a moment. Wonder what it would be like unleashing a few of these upon Oto. He muttered. No, Revan said from next to him. But dear, no Naruto. We are not transplanting creatures from my known galaxy upon your world. Think about it. If another person like Orochimaru or Sasuke got to power and had them. Naruto sighed. You're right. I'm sorry. I know. You just like thinking of ways to protect those you care for. And while they might be gone, their legacy and yours will remain. Naruto smiled thinking of his image next to Tsunade's on the Hokage monument. So, we collect Ben and Master Jin, then what? Naruto asked as they found a escape passage that would take them back to the surface. Well, we report to the Council of Masters, then you and I are going to work on some of your force skills that I know you've been avoiding. Naruto pouted. But, I like my jutsu better. Revan gave him a look that wives across all the galaxies and dimensions give their husbands when they say something that they feel is stupid. You like the explosions. I swear, you and Anko have to be related. Hey, you leave Anko out of this. Naruto said. Oh no, I'm not. I still have those pictures. Revan said, and Naruto stopped and looked at her in shock. You promised you'd not hold those against me. Revan smiled at her husband. No, I didn't. I said I would think about not using them. But then your drinking buddy let slip that she saw you. Naruto groaned. Wasn't my fault. She used a fire jutsu and burned off my clothes. I dived into the water. And she just happened to fall in right. Revan asked. He didn't see the smile, as he was busy trying to think of a way out of the doghouse for something that happened nearly 30 years ago. And I think I need to be reassured my husband loves me. Revan said. Naruto heard the teasing in her voice and smiled. And how will I do that, my love? Is there any form of barter I can offer? Revan laughed as they took the lift up. She smiled as her husband nibbled her neck below her ear, whispering suggestions of what he could do in trade. Thank the Force HK's deactivated. I would hate for him to mention anything Naruto's planning on. Oh, that sounds good. She thought as one suggestion had her eyes rolling up into her head while his hands massaged her ribs and teased her while staying over her robes. A grinning Naruto and a flushed Revan rejoined Obi-Wan and Ki-Gon 20 minutes later. Are you okay? The Padawan asked, seeing Revan's flushed condition. Never better, she said, putting the droid head on the table. What? Gentlemen, meet HK-47, a very old friend. Revan said, stealing Ki-Gon's tea and sipping it. Did the refugees enjoy the donation? Naruto asked. Yes, they were most appreciative of such a large amount. It will allow them to buy medical supplies and food and blankets for all. Naruto nodded and Revan could see him thinking. Are we finished then? She asked. Ki-Gon nodded. Just need to get back to the transport and we can head back anytime. Revan looked at the droid head. I want to visit a couple of stalls before we go. I need to see if I can find parts or a frame for him. Wouldn't you have more luck on Coruscant? Obi-Wan asked. Revan smiled and shook her head. Doubt it. Most of his original parts one hand made. I have a feeling I'll be doing that as well for a new body. Ki-Gon was looking at the droid head. I don't think I've ever seen a style like this before. I'm sure you wouldn't, Revan said, leaning against Naruto. When I made HK, I was just starting down my path as a Sith Lord. He was my bodyguard and more importantly, he was an droid. Obi-Wan gasped. And you want to rebuild him, whatever for? Revan smiled as she patted the deactivated droid head. He was my friend. And even when I became a Jedi, he stood by me and fought for the Republic. Ki-Gon put a hand on his Padawan's shoulder to stop him from saying something else. I think we need to get going, Naruto said in a low voice, and the three Jedi looked at him. Revan saw his gaze. Son of a Hutt, she muttered, seeing the heavily armed trio of Trandoshan coming their way after the bartender pointed at them. I don't think they like the fact I won so much in the arena, Naruto said, standing up. He looked at the others. Get to the ship, I'll only be a moment. Revan grabbed the head of her droid and kissed her husband on the lips. Come on, you two, she said, heading for the back door. You're just going to leave him against a bar full of thugs? Obi-Wan asked incredulously as his master pushed him along. Revan snorted. He won't kill them unless they force him to. What about them killing him? Obi-Wan asked as they were moving along the vast catwalks. Revan laughed. They won't. Behind them several explosions could be heard, and as a door opened they heard a shout of, Debakua Cage Bunshin. Revan winced. We won't have to pay for damages, right? Explosions could be heard and the door hissed shut again as the trio continued on. Naruto looked around the smoking remains of the bar inside. I am so not paying for this. He muttered as he picked the pockets of the downed bounty hunters and the patrons that had decided to join in. He got a storage scroll and sealed away weapons and armor that he thought he could sell. The credits he set aside in a pouch. I can get something for Rev later. He smiled. And maybe visit Dex and get some ramen. He giggled a bit thinking he's about to pull one over on his wife. At a vendor's stall near the spaceport, Revan stopped in mid-haggle. My wife's senses tell me my husband is about to do something stupid and try and pretend it was okay. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, whatever it is, forget it. I am watching you. She sent through their bond. Ah, Rev, I find your lack of faith disturbing. It's me. Revan sighed. I know, that's why I'm telling you now, whatever you have in that ramen-addicted mind of yours, forget it. And you are not going to Dex's diner more than once a week. Crap. Revan smiled as she went back to haggling over parts with the Toydarian. Jedi Temple, Coruscant. Revan snuggled against her husband's bare chest. They'd been back at the temple for a week and she'd come across several ideas on how to rebuild HK-47. Most of it came from designs from the Trade Federation. She'd studied their droid designs and with modifications she would have a new body for her former droid. Naruto's hand trailed up her back and she smiled. Morning sleepy head, she said kissing his neck. Naruto mumbled. Over the past week he'd been locked away with Master Yoda, and neither said a word of what they were doing in the sealed room. Revan knew that whatever it was, her husband was exhausted each night. She couldn't find any wounds, but that was due to his healing factor. Last night, however, he'd returned to their chambers and proceeded to make love to her till well after the fourth chime. Are you going to tell me what you and Master Yoda are doing? She asked. Maybe later. Naruto said, kissing her forehead. How's your research coming along? He asked. It's fine. I sent an order to a distributor here on Coruscant and should have what I need in a couple of days, and HK up and running a day or two after that. Revan straddled her husband and looked down at him. You're shielding, she said with a mock pout. You're snooping. He fired back as his hands grabbed her hips. I'm your wife, I'm supposed to snoop. Slowly they began to move, teasing one another. She leaned down to capture his lips with a kiss when the door chime sounded. Ignore it, she said as they were both close. It continued to chime and Revan was getting mad. She stood and was heading for the door as the communicator on the nightstand pinged. You get that, I'll kill who's at the door, she said. Rev. Naruto called and she stopped. Best put on a robe. She looked down at her form and grabbing a robe off the chair she slipped out of the bedroom. Naruto picked up the comlink. Namikaze, the building best be under attack at this hour or someone's getting a lightsaber enema. A chuckle from the comlink told him who it was. Master Yoda. Need you and your wife in chambers. Matters to attend to, serious it is. We'll be there, he said and put the comlink down. He could hear Revan telling off someone and sighed as he pulled on his pants and went to see who was there so early. Obi-Wan Kenobi was not having a good morning. His master had roused him from slumber early and sent him to wake Naruto and Revan. He'd been standing outside the door ringing the chime over and over for 10 minutes. It was when he pounded on the door that it hissed open and standing there with the robe barely closed was Revan looking like a vengeful Sith Lord she was pictured as in the archives. Are her eyes yellow? Obi-Wan wondered before she reached out and dragged him into the room. What the frack do you want at this time of morning, Padawan Kenobi? She hissed. Obi-Wan winced. It was rare that she addressed him thus, and he knew she was not happy. I was sent by Qui-Gon too. I don't care if the Supreme Chancellor sent you. Do you know what you interrupted? He paled as she then went on to tell him, his eyes widening, and he stepped back as she began curing at him in 3 different languages. I was so close and you nerf herder had to. Rev. Obi-Wan sighed in relief when he saw his blonde friend coming out of the bedroom. I'm not finished with you. Revan said, seeing Obi-Wan's look of relief. Leave him alone, love. Master Yoda wants us and them to report to the main council chamber. Something big has happened. Revan growled and stormed back to the bedroom, and the door hissed shut. Obi-Wan sighed and shared a look with his friend. Your wife is one scary woman. Naruto chuckled. Secret Ben. All women are scary. He entered the kitchenette and got a cup of coffee. You do know she's going to get you again, right? Obi-Wan paled. I would be in your debt if you would save me, my friend. Naruto smirked. We'll see. He sipped his coffee. By the way, did they ever get the library sorted out? Obi-Wan looked at his friend and shook his head. I thought the archivist was going to have heart failure seeing all the statues painted. Naruto smirked. I did something similar when I was 12. You all are way too uptight around here. Obi-Wan looked at him. And hanging master took by his undergarments in the gardens. Naruto's eyes hardened. He insulted my wife. He's lucky that's all did to him. Next time he becomes my sparring partner. Obi-Wan had sparred with Naruto once they returned from Konoha. His shoulder still ached when he thought about it. Along with his ribs, his hip, his right leg. Put this on, Revan said, coming out and tossing a shirt at Naruto. He slipped it on as she tied her hair back in a loose ponytail. Obi-Wan wisely kept his mouth shut as he followed them out the door. Naruto had no such compulsion as he decided to egg his wife on. Really, Rev, you look like you just rolled out of the bed after a wild night of hot passionate. Obi-Wan somehow managed to trip on the perfectly clear corridor. Supreme Chancellor has asked us to investigate the blockade of Naboo. Mace Windu said to the quartet before the council. And what are our actions to be should negotiations fail? Revan asked. Report to us you must. Advise the Chancellor we will upon your findings. Yoda said. Be careful, shrouded this is. Naruto looked at the little master. As careful as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Most of the council didn't understand the joke, but Revan's chuckle joined Yoda's. To Naboo you go. You have several days before the transport is ready. Prepare you must. Yoda said. The 4 bowed. May the Force be with you. It took nearly a week before the transport was ready. Revan loaded HK-47 on board and spent a day locked away putting the droid's new body together. Naruto shuddered seeing the multiple arms, and even more when he opened a crate to reveal the weapons she'd picked up. Rev, he called as she was welding the droid together. What kind of weapon is this? He asked. That is a Mandalorian assault rifle. The tube attached underneath is a grenade launcher. She said, pausing to see what he was holding up. And why are there 4 blaster pistols here? Naruto asked. Well, he'll have 4 arms. I've added updated targeting programs to his matrix. So far the head had remained deactivated. Revan hand managed to make a new head casing and would give the droid a more menacing look. Revan had allowed him to add the Konoha leaf symbol to the outer casing, and she'd added programming for HK to obey Naruto as it would her. I'm surprised you got all this before we left. Naruto admitted. I paid a bit extra for faster delivery. Revan admitted. Naruto had seen her vault and had to admit the amount of jewels meant she'd never have to worry about being poor. He picked up the new head casing. He doesn't look like much. His personality is killer. Revan said. The door chime sounded and Naruto opened it to reveal Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. We're a couple hours out still. Qui-Gon said. He eyed the droid and the Jedi Master shuddered. A vicious-looking droid you have, Revan. Nah, he's harmless, unless attacked. She said, making adjustments to the limbs. What's that? Obi-Wan asked, pointing at the cylinders on the droid's forearms. Each arm has a personal shield. I had a ton of them in my vault. Revan finished up with the torso and sealed the chest up. They sat watching her make adjustments to the droid's body, which she had painted a rust orange. Looks like you'll have to finish him up later, Rev. Naruto said when the ship's intercom told them they were coming out of hyperspace. She sighed and stepped back. Naruto pulled out a scroll and after scribbling runes on it he wiped his blood on it and with a poof, HK-47 MKII was sealed inside a simple scroll for easy travel. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon blinked and Revan smiled. You should see what he has in some of the other ones. Both Jedi saw the pack and Naruto smiled. What? Everyone back home can do that. Revan sighed. Sadly, he's right. Can you? Qui-Gon asked. Not as well, that's why I prefer to let him do it. Revan said. My abilities are more combat-oriented. Naruto snorted as he pulled his wife into a hug from behind her. Lazy. He whispered in her ear. Troublesome blonde. She fired back. I knew letting you play chess with Shikamaru was a bad thing. He actually was a genius. Lazy bastard. Naruto said and Revan knew without even opening the bond her husband missed his friend. We're on approach, the captain wants us in the. Obi-Wan said shutting off his comlink. The Namakazes nodded and followed Qui-Gon and his Padawan from their quarters and headed to see where they would be meeting the Trade Federation in space above the world of Naboo. Why do I have a bad feeling about this? Naruto wondered.